I'm very excited to welcome Vanessa Curry as our next presenter. Vanessa Curry joins us from the University of Guelph, where she is part of the Potato Research Program. Welcome, Vanessa.
Thank you, Stephanie.
Just before I turn the mic over to you, Vanessa, I just wanted to give a great big shout out to EcoPlus for sponsoring this session. Optimizing water use is important for sustainable potato production, and EcoPlus's new technology, StockAbsorb, will bank excess water from rainfall and release it to the crops for better yield, saving irrigated fields time and money by reducing water frequency. See for yourself at eco-plus.ca or call 519-803-4878 to place your order. And without further ado, I will let Vanessa continue on with her presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephanie. So I'd just like to present some of the highlights of our research program and what we generally do during the years of our program and special considerations and activities that we did this year. So I'll just present those to you. Thank you for joining us and welcome to the first annual Potato Summit. As I say, a great idea. Hopefully we can do this again sometime. And that is me, by the way. So just a little bit of background. You may or may not be aware that some of the varieties that were bred at the University of Guelph in cooperation with Agriculture and Agri-Food Canada. The Yukon Gold is probably the most famous one, and it was developed and bred by Mr. Gary Johnson. And along with some other ones like Rideau and Tamagmi and Red Gold and Ruby Gold and Rose Gold, a lot of different varieties and successful lines that came out of the program historically over the years during the 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s. And in this slide here, what you can see is that G6666-4Y was the original cross number for the Yukon Gold, and he makes a note there that it was very attractive. And so that's something that has endured down through the years. So coming up to date then, our trials in 2020, so this time last year, maybe about 11 months ago, we obviously had a lot of the challenges facing us through COVID, and research activities at Guelph were suspended for a couple of months until we could develop plans to work safely and do the field. And agricultural research was given special consideration due to the sensitivity of the timing and the fact that we just couldn't start and stop. You know, you can't plant your crop in August if maybe things get better. So we were given special permission, and we had to develop plans so that we could work safely. And among those plans were reducing the actual work so that we had fewer people and we wouldn't be crowding the workplace. And we had to travel separately and a number of different things like that we had to consider. So that was challenging, but we did get started. And our projects that we did, and we usually do, were main crop trials, as in full season trials of fresh lines and chip lines. We had early generation selections. We were still doing storage chip tests at that time and continuing those. We had a new cooperation with the PED study, which you just heard about. Our program leader, Dr. Katerina Jordan, is also on the PED study as well. And Eugenia Banks did her on-farm trials, and you may have heard some of her presentations at other meetings. And we present these things at the fall meetings and reports annually, and we've been continued to do that. And regarding the report, I do have paper reports, and I also have PDFs. So if after this presentation people are interested in obtaining a copy of the trial report for 2020, please let me know and I can send it to you. So the main crop trials in Elora largely focus on chip lines, which can be stored commercially, red and purple skinned and white flesh, round whites, and white flesh and yellow flesh lines. In a normal year, we have long types and French fry varieties, but that was something that had to be cut back this year because the Ag Canada staff just weren't able to access the seed. So something had to give. That was part of our reduction for this year. But hopefully coming up in 2021, we'll be able to resume all of our activities as we normally would. So this is actually pictures of our crop that we had this year, and it grew pretty well. So this is just a harvest picture. We had pretty good crop coming down. These are some red ones that we like. And I was so grateful at that time of year to be able to continue conducting our research. It really meant a lot to me, and we really enjoyed doing that. So in the storage chipping, we put our chip samples in storage at a commercial storage at WD Potato in October, and we sample them monthly, all from October through to June. And we like to compare with short-term and long-term storage chipping varieties. And we measure chip color and sucrose and dextrose and specific gravity. And we get a lot of great support and have a wonderful functional partnership with our industry collaborators in our storage chipping. And this is so that we can supply a 12-month supply of chipping potatoes to our industry. It is not quite that now, but we want to extend the chipping season by having early maturing lines and having longer storing lines as well. And we were fortunate enough last spring, just before the lockdown, to be able to buy a brand new Eggtron, which is a spectrophotometer for measuring the chip scores. And it's very easy to use, and it's very convenient. And it also is going to enable us to measure the chip color of the chip samples in the Ag Canada program that are coming from out east and out west as well. So it helps to harmonize our results. And we also do culinary tests, boiling and baking. And this is one of the early generation lines that caught my eye because it had a nice yield, but it also kept the color really nicely. Even after it was cooked, you can see that there's a darker red compared with Norland, which is the color tends to fade when you cook it. But this one I will keep my eye on as we go forward, and hopefully it can be advanced into the production system. And this is one of our advanced chip lines that I think is going to be presented and offered at some point. It's the W10655-1, a nice russet skin, barely russet really, more like a heavy flake and white flesh. And this is another chip line that's going to be advanced. And this is a fresh market line. So there were not as many lines for us to evaluate and choose from this year, but we hope to be ramping that back up. And then when Ag Canada gets the accelerated release program going again, these lines will be offered to industry at a certain point. And the early generation selections is something that we started doing about 10 years ago. And that's when in potato breeding program, they're making crosses and planting tubers in tuber families so that they can choose the ones that can advance. It's usually done visually, and it involves usually thousands of selections. They were doing that in Lethbridge and they were doing that in Fredericton, but we weren't doing it here. And we were concerned that we were missing out on lines that might do well in Ontario, but perhaps would be discarded out east or out west. So we started asking for, and we now receive several hundred early generation lines, and we can choose them. It's largely visual based on their uniformity of size and shape and attractiveness, and there's zero tolerance for scab and other big defects. But we can relay that information to the breeders in Fredericton so that they can pick them up when they're selecting them, and they can be advanced with Ontario as a highlight on them. And this is another picture of just what it's like to do those early generation selections. Like you can see they're large, fairly good uniformity of size and shape. And these ones are not so bad. And there are many other ones that get discarded. About 10% is a very generous selection. And that's what the little piles look like as we go along. And doing early generation selections is great fun. And it's something that even students, when they tag along, can learn to get an eye for a good potato quite easily. And I won't say too much about the PED study because Mario and Dimitri did such a good job of covering their portion of it, but we are getting a new graduate student who's going to be taking over the management and the experiments of the PED study, but we're going to improve the understanding of the causal agents and development of commercial soil tests and soil health, and also doing some surveying there. And this year we had a trial at the Simcoe Research Station, and they're going to be continuing that again with cover crops and fumigation mixes. So we'll have a master's student who'll be on this, and hopefully if we do this summit next year, he can present some of his results. And so I just wanted to say, finally, thank you. The project is funded through the Canadian Agricultural Partnership, which is a 5-year provincial and provincial and territorial initiative. And I receive every year so much help from the growers in Ontario and so many other people who help me with all of these things. They're very, very grateful, and it's a wonderful opportunity. And I just want to express our gratitude to everybody around here who has helped with all of our projects. Thank you.
Great. Thanks so much for that, Vanessa. That was really great. I'm excited to hear that you have a new master's student joining, and I hope that we can hear more from them next year, for sure.
Yeah, and one of the things we missed this year was having our potato open house, which we do every August. We have a potato research field day, and we weren't able to have that this year. And I honestly, I really don't know whether we will be able to have it this summer, but that was another opportunity to share our research. And we always enjoy networking and getting feedback from growers, and we missed doing that very much.
Yeah.
So yes, it's also an opportunity for our graduate students to share their research as well.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there's been a lot of that missed this year. And like you said, it's really nice that we're still able to gather in a virtual format. We know it's not the same, but it's still great to be able to have you here with us virtually from the comfort of your home. So we appreciate your time. And we do have a few questions here. So let's get started with that. So how did the expansion into early generation breeding material come about? Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, so as I say, we were concerned that the selections they were making in Fredericton and in Lethbridge, that was great, but that we may be missing out on something. There's a regional differences with potato varieties, and some varieties grow great out west with the longer days and cooler nights. Others grow better in the slightly different climates and different soil types. And increasingly, the soils in central Canada are warming up, and our season may be getting a little shorter, and we've had some severe weather events. So there are a lot of regional differences, and we wanted to be able to capture that in the breeding program so that, as I say, the varieties that looked good in Ontario could be advanced for production in Ontario.
Great. Okay, and we have an audience question here. So on average, can you speak about how many potatoes you were able to harvest from a single plant of the breed in the trial that you were just speaking about?
Okay, so about, I can't say per plant because we have various plots. If it was a specific one of the ones that I mentioned, I might have some information here, or I could follow up with that specific question.
Sure, maybe we'll follow up and we'll make sure that we're getting.
Yeah, I could. If, as I say, if it was one of the ones that I mentioned, I can find that out. There's a bit more information than what I was able to just relay to you here, and I could try to find that for you.
Wonderful. Okay. How much industry involvement is there in the variety evaluation process?
Well, as I say, we have a really good functional partnership with the Ontario Potato Board and many of the growers and storage operators in the province. And we enjoy having them at our potato day. And we'd like to hear what it is. With the chip market, there's some fairly distinct criteria that they're looking for and things that are quite measurable. With the table stock market, it's a bit more of a moving target, and it can be difficult to find out what exactly table growers and their customers are looking for. So we certainly welcome that input, and usually through the meetings and the open house and the variety release open houses that we used to have. We're a big part of that and helping us to guide our selections and advancements with the industry input.
Wonderful. Are you working on any varieties that would be resistant against verticillium and nematode pressure?
We haven't yet, but that's certainly something that is in the future.
Well, that's great.
Disease tolerance is a big thing, yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think especially after the presentation that we just heard from Mario and Dimitro, I think that's really prevalent in everybody's minds right now. So Wonderful. We'll just give it a couple more minutes if there are any other audience questions. We still have Vanessa on here with us shortly. But maybe quickly before we go, Vanessa, maybe you can chat a little bit about some of your own maybe personal goals with the breeding project and what you'd like to see, or some of the things that you're excited about going forward.
Well, like going back to 2018, the accelerated release program that Ag Canada was working on, they were working on revamping that and modernizing it so that it was better suited to encourage the uptake of new varieties. And we had a meeting in Lethbridge, or sorry, not in Red Deer, about that, and they're making a lot of progress, and that was last fall. So now with COVID, that's been stalled. And so I'm really looking forward to the advancement and modernization of the breeding program and the release program, so that, as I say, the new varieties can be into the production pipeline more quickly, and there's greater uptake from the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that COVID had a lot of, impact on, your work as it has on everybody's work. Have there been other things that you've been involved with that have been delayed or kind of put on pause at the moment because of that?
Well, I think honestly we've done really well. In terms of getting the field trials done and getting people out and into the field. I think the lab, some of the lab work has stalled, especially with our PED project and things there, because people are limited to how many people can be in the lab together. And as I say, just general meetings and get-togethers where spontaneous conversations, and you learn more by visiting growers' farms. And so the other thing that we didn't get to do this year was we normally have an early maturing chip trial in Leamington each year, in which we're looking for very 90-day chipping varieties that can be field chippers. And we weren't able to do that. Like, we would plant that in the middle of April, and we couldn't get that. I couldn't get the seed, and we weren't able to go anywhere last April. So we had to give that up this year, but I would really like to resume that as soon as I can with our grower cooperators in Leamington, and continue to look for the early maturing chip lines that will help provide that 12-month supply of potatoes for the industry.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be really frustrating, I'm sure. And like I said, there's all kinds of impacts on from the pandemic on the industry in general. But it's disappointing when you have projects like that on the go that you have to pivot. And so I'm glad that you're still able to do some parts of your important work. But hopefully this year,
we did pretty well, and we met good many objectives. That's for sure.
Yeah. Absolutely. Is there anything else you wanted to share with our audience or attendees today before we sign off?
No, I don't think so, other than that I am available, through the University of Guelph, and I have Twitter, and any way that people have questions or looking for information or input and comments, I'm always available I can always be reached, and I'm always interested to hear what people have to say.
Wonderful. Well, thank you. And you did mention about sharing the annual trial report. So if we could get a copy of the PDF, we'll make sure that everybody registered today is able to get access to that, if that works for you.
Yep, I can help you with that. Yes. Wonderful. Excellent. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you so much. And we will share your contact information with our attendees as well if they'd like to follow up via email or on Twitter as well. We'll make sure that we get
I'm happy to hear from people and engage you in conversations. Sure.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much again for joining us today, Vanessa. We really appreciate your time, and looks like you're staying nice and warm there at home. And so continue to do so. And thanks again.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye.